You know, it's pretty amazing when you think about it, how a single sentence, just one line, can unlock a whole universe of meaning. Well, in this deep dive, we're going to do exactly that. We're unpacking just one verse from the Quran, Surah Al-A'raf, verse 51, and you're going to see how it connects to theology, the cosmos, and yeah, even our own personal lives. So let's jump right in. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the verse itself, this really stark warning about forgetting the day of judgment. Then we'll rewind all the way back to the story of Adam to see this exact principle in action. After that, we'll zoom out to look at the bigger picture, God's unchanging laws in the universe. And finally, we'll bring it all right back home to you and me and the legacy that we're creating every single day. All right, first up, let's get into the verse that kicks this whole thing off. It's really powerful and honestly a little bit chilling. It paints a perfect picture of how our choices on earth are mirrored in the hereafter. Just listen to that language. It's talking about people who got so caught up in the glitz and glamour of this world that they treated their deen, which is, their entire way of life, as nothing more than lahu and la'ib, basically just fun and games. And the divine response? It's a perfect echo. We shall forget them as they forgot. That right there is an incredible statement about cause and effect. Okay, so these two words, lahu and la'ib, they're absolutely key. Lahu is basically anything that distracts you from what really matters. Think about mindlessly scrolling on your phone for hours when you know you have something important to do. And la'ib, that's like play, but without any real purpose. It's treating life like a video game where you think there are no real consequences. The verse is pointing out this deep spiritual problem where we get so lost in the side quests, we totally forget about the main mission. So what does it even mean for God to forget? Come on, it's not like God is literally having a memory lapse. Theologically, this is a really powerful metaphor. It means a deliberate pulling back of mercy. It's a direct reflection of their own actions. See, they live their lives as if God didn't exist. So on the day of judgment, God treats them as if they don't exist within his sphere of grace. It's the ultimate you reap what you sow moment, isn't it? To really get our heads around this idea of deception and consequences, the Quran gives us the perfect case study, the story of Adam. And trust me, this is not just some ancient fairy tale. It's a timeless lesson that unpacks these exact themes we're talking about. I mean, just picture it for a second. You are given an entire paradise. You can go anywhere, eat anything, total freedom. There's just one rule. One, see that tree over there? Just don't go near it. That's the whole setup for Adam and Eve. The tree itself isn't really the point. It's a symbol of a boundary, a very simple test of trust in a world that is otherwise completely open. And this brings us to a really fascinating theological question. When we hear the word paradise, we immediately think of the final destination, right? The eternal reward. But was the garden Adam was in that paradise? Because the answer to that question changes how we understand this entire story. So the source material makes a really crucial distinction here. No, this was not the eternal paradise. And how do we know? Well, here's the logical giveaway. Satan was able to get in and whisper his temptations. The eternal, capital P, paradise is a place of absolute purity. There's no room for evil there. So Adam's garden was something different. It was more like a paradise of the isthmus, a beautiful but temporary testing ground. Now, the commands God gave Adam were not all the same. They basically fall into two types. The first one, eat from wherever you will, that's called an irshadi command. Think of it like a doctor saying, hey, eating well is good for your health. It's just solid guidance for your own benefit. But the second one, do not approach this tree, that was a taklifi command. That wasn't just advice. That was a law, a red line, and crossing it was going to have serious consequences. That was the real test. Okay, so the line was drawn in the sand, clear as day. So how on earth did they end up crossing it? Well, the Quran gives us an absolute masterclass in the psychology of temptation, a playbook that, frankly, is still being used on all of us today. This is the brilliant and, frankly, terrifying part of Satan's whole strategy. He didn't show up looking like a monster. No, he came disguised as a sincere advisor. And then, for the finishing move, he swore by God himself that he was telling the truth. Now, Adam, in his innocence, couldn't even comprehend someone lying while using God's name. It's such a powerful warning, isn't it? The most dangerous deceptions often come dressed up in the clothes of sincerity. The Quran has a very specific word for this type of deception, ghurur. And it's more than just a simple lie. It's the art of making something false look incredibly true and appealing. It's the ultimate marketing trick. Think about how a commercial can sell you a sugary drink by associating it with pure happiness. Satan did the exact same thing. He didn't say, hey, go disobey God. He said, pissed. You see that tree? That's the secret to becoming an angel and having a kingdom that never ends. He played on their deepest hopes to lead them to their own downfall. All right, so we've seen the story of Adam and Eve play out on stage. But now, it's time to go backstage. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the deep metaphysical truths this whole drama is pointing to. Because this story, it's really a mirror reflecting the very essence of what it means to be human. At our very core, every single one of us is a walking, talking contradiction. Our bodies, they're made from tin, from clay, which ties us to this earth, to our physical needs and desires. But then God breathed into that clay from his own spirit, the Ruah, which connects us to something transcendent, something divine. So our entire life is basically this constant tug of war between the mud and the stars. The real question is, which side are you feeding? Now, here's a point that is just so powerful and for its time, totally revolutionary. You've probably heard the common story that Eve was created from Adam's rib, right? Well, this interpretation says, nope, forget that. The narrative here says she was created from the very same primordial clay, the same tin as Adam. That is huge. It means they share the exact same origin, the same essential nature, the same inherent worth, right from the very beginning. Okay, ready to go even further down the rabbit hole? Let's talk about a time before time itself. There's this concept called the Alam Adar, the world of particles. You can think of it like a cosmic pre-existence for all of humanity. In this realm, every single human soul that would ever exist was present, and God asked all of us just one simple question: am I not your Lord? And every single soul replied, yes, you are. This means our spiritual journey in this life isn't about discovering something new. It's about remembering something that is already hardwired into our very being. So the big question is, how are we supposed to read a story like this? Well, there are two main lenses we can use. The first is Tafsir. Tafsir is like reading the sheet music. It's the literal external story: a man, a woman, a garden, a tree. But then there's Ta'wil. Ta'wil is like hearing the symphony. It's about understanding the inner symbolic reality that the story is pointing to. From this view, Adam represents all of us, the tree represents the moral choices we face every day, and Satan represents that tempting voice we all hear in our heads. Now, it's really important to understand that the story of Adam isn't just a one-off event. It's actually a perfect example of a much larger universal pattern. And this brings us to a huge concept, sunnatullah. This is the idea that God runs the universe through consistent, predictable, unchanging laws. Think of sunnatullah as the source code of the universe, or its divine operating system. The idea is that God isn't just winging it, making things up as he goes along. Nope. There are deep, established principles that govern everything, from the way an atom spins to the way civilizations rise and fall. And if you really want to understand reality, you have to understand this operating system. And honestly, you can see this divine code everywhere you look. The fact that the sun rises every morning, the laws of gravity that keep us on the ground, the incredible elegance of a DNA strand. These aren't just happy accidents. They are all examples of sunnatullah. They all point to a universe that is governed by incredible precision and order, not by random chaos. And just to give you a sense of the mind-boggling scale we're dealing with, scientists estimate that the universe is about 13.4 billion years old. For all of that time, the same fundamental laws have been operating consistently. I mean, imagine a computer program running without a single bug or crash for 13.4 billion years. That's the level of stability and order we're talking about here. Now check out this really beautiful nuance in how this whole divine system works. Think of God's promises of mercy, that's the wad, as being based on his grace. It's like a bonus. He might promise you a reward of 10, but in his generosity, he might give you 100. But his warnings, the wide, they're based on pure justice. He will never punish you more than what was fair. Justice is the absolute baseline, but his mercy can always go above and beyond. Okay, so if God has a sunnah, an unchanging way of doing things, it kind of makes sense that we do too, right? We, as human beings, also create our own patterns, our own traditions, our own legacies. This is the whole idea of human sunnah. And every action we take can create a ripple effect that lasts long, long after we're gone. The Prophet Muhammad himself really drilled down on this idea of ongoing accountability. And it's pretty profound. He taught that when you start something, good or bad, You don't just get the reward or the sin for your own action. You also get a share for every single person who follows your example. It's like starting a chain reaction, and you're responsible for where it leads. So you basically have two kinds of legacies you can leave behind. On one hand, you have sunnah hasana, a good tradition. Think of the person who establishes a charity that feeds people for decades, or a scientist whose discovery saves millions of lives. They continue to get rewarded for that good even after they're gone. On the flip side, you have sunnah sayyi'ah, a bad or toxic tradition. Think of someone who normalizes corruption or spreads harmful lies that poison society for generations. They continue to carry the burden for that harm.
So, this all brings it right back home, doesn't it? This leads us to the million-dollar question. What do we actually do with all this information? How can we, in our own lives, right now, become architects of a positive legacy, a sunnah hasana?
And here's something that is absolutely crucial to understand. The word sunnah here does not just mean a religious ritual. Not at all. It can be any precedent you set, any established practice. Even something as simple as starting a tradition at your workplace where everyone chips in to help a colleague in need, that's a sunnah hasana. It's about creating positive patterns in any and every area of life. So how can you tell if the tradition you're starting is a genuinely good one? Well, here's a kind of quick checklist. First, it has to align with the overarching principles of the divine law, like justice and compassion. Second, it can't be some kind of harmful invention. Third, it has to make rational, ethical sense. And finally, it has to actually serve the community and make things better for people. Now, to give a large-scale contemporary example, the source material we're analyzing here actually points to the establishment of a government based on Islamic principles, something like an Islamic republic, as a prime example of a sunnah hasana. The argument presented is that such a system creates the very framework that allows a society to live according to divine law. Now, it's really important to state, this is one specific interpretation, and of course, there are many diverse viewpoints on the complex relationship between faith and governance. And just like that, we've come full circle. We started with one single verse about being forgotten, and from there, we've journeyed through creation, human choice, and the incredible responsibility we all carry. So the final question isn't just for us to think about, it's a call to action. It all boils down to this. If our actions today create ripples into the future, what kind of ancestor are you choosing to be? What legacy, what sunnah are you building right now? The choice, as always, is ours.